Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. I covered this on the audio-only podcast, the CRS incident that's going on. So if you haven't heard, and the reason why I'm covering it on this one is it's a bigger story that needs more light shined on it. And my Rumble audience is just a little bigger than my podcast audience, so it was time to bring it to the video podcast and put myself on video and put myself on record to talk about this. So the CRS story, if you don't know what CRS is a YouTuber, a popular YouTuber, who covers the Second Amendment, does gun reviews and stuff, and did for a long time. His name's Matt Hoover. And in the process of doing this, a company got together with him to make a product called an autokey card. And on the autokey card, it was basically what I'm showing on the screen. It is basically a business card with a laser engraving of this device on there. Now, of this product, okay? Now, the story goes that Matt from CRS and the guy that made the autokey have been conspiring and distributing fully automatic or machine guns, and that's why they're in trouble with the ATF. Now, I have a couple problems with this story. Part of it is what Matt has said himself. I don't really care because there is such a thing as a First Amendment, and I'm kind of echoing some of the stuff that Mr. Guns and Gear has said himself. But he's correct. The First Amendment is there to protect speech that you don't like. I mean, that's fact of the matter. That's why it's there. It's so that we can debate and talk about stuff. And whatever Matt said doesn't incur what has been going on with Matt. So what Matt had happen, or CRS happened, him and the other gentleman that made the actual cards had gotten into agreement to where Matt would advertise these on CRS, and CRS, or Matt was an FFL and an SOT, so he contacted an ATF agent, or his ATF field officer that he's supposed to as a FFL, and he asked if these were illegal. And the FFL, or the ATF agent said they were perfectly legal. Because there is no way that this is a machine gun. And let's get into that. So this is a piece of metal about the size of a business card with a design etched on it, and it's made for a lightning link, is basically what it is. Now, if you don't know what a lightning link is, it's to make a semi-automatic it'll trip into a fully automatic gun. But here's where this gets really, really into the weeds and not correct. And what I mean by that is this auto key card was just as a number one, it was a novelty item, I believe. I think they even showed it with a bottle opener in some case to open beer bottles. Okay? So this was never meant to be a real thing. It meant to be a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. Well, what happened in court, because these guys were, this case actually made it to trial, and now Matt is in jail because he was convicted. Now, I don't know how a jury could convict Matt, and I don't know how any ATF agent could actually speak or actually testify in the manner that they did. So what happened in the court case was the ATF agent, one of their experts, testified that you could, in fact, make this card into a lightning link, thus making it a machine gun, so constructive intent. But it took the ATF agent expert 40 minutes and he had 4 of these cards, but he could only get 1 of the 4 to work, sort of. And it turns out what he actually did was get a hammer strike, or a hammer follow at the end of it. So it's not even a full automatic machine gun. He caused the gun to malfunction. Now, there are a number of issues with that alone, that an ATF agent could get up there and say that you took 40 minutes to mill something out to make it into a machine gun. Well, this design is readily available on the internet. You could have just spray painted it onto a damn piece of metal and etched it out yourself and then tried to do this. The only thing that these guys have done is they etched it on as a, that's the one step beforehand that they did that you would have to do. Now, the other problem with this is that 80% of AR-15s could never use this anyway. And the reason why is where this would fit into the pocket, where the trigger group goes in an AR-15. In most AR-15s, they're not milled to where this would even fit. They're milled in such a way to deter fully automatic components being installed in them after the fact. This is done so that, to comply with the law. Not just to comply with the law, but it makes sure that they've complied in such a way that you have to do a lot to make an AR-15 into a fully automatic gun. You have to do some milling. You have to make either get the components or get something like this design, not this particular card. And then you would have to have the expertise and knowledge to fashion it in such a way that it would work, fit in there, test it, so on and so forth. So basically what the ATF is saying is they got were called out to be a witness, and they lied on stage saying that this is 100% a machine gun. And I say that they lied because they got on there, and you can't take, like I said, you can't take 4 of these, get one of them to kind of work, and then say that this is a machine gun. If it was a machine gun, or had the ability to make a machine gun, it should have been fairly simple, shouldn't have taken 40 minutes, and it should have been able to be replicated on all 4 of the items that you had. All 4 of these cards should have been able to be converted into a device that would have readily made another AR-15 into a machine gun. The fact that they didn't perform as you advertised, and you said that it took 40 minutes to do this. Now, I want to know what they said in court to get a jury to side with them, because I would hope that every red-blooded American would see through the lies of supposed experts after the COVID stuff we've been through and look at it objectively and say, this isn't right. I mean, to make a machine gun takes a lot of expertise, takes a lot of machining and skill. There is no such thing as just, I mean, to be honest, I think Brandon Herrera said it, and I'm pretty sure any AK guy could probably convert into Kalashnikov roughly in about the same time if we had the components. But that would be constructive intent, meaning that you would have to modify the gun in such a way that it would become a fully automatic machine gun. And that takes skill and takes pure intent. Now, a lot of us look at this case and they wonder, well, okay, it's just one dude, not a big deal. But let's look at what really happens here. This is a First Amendment issue, first off, in my mind. Having this knowledge isn't illegal. If you've been paying attention to the last video I dropped, which was about these plastic guns, these 3D printed guns, aren't your average guns anymore. They're innovative and they last, unlike what former printed guns used to be. But the fact that they've convicted someone now for 45 years to 110, depending upon which story you look at, says that anybody who exchanged a file that could show you how to make one of these 3D printed guns could now be gone after. And it doesn't just end there. What happens if, you're Antifa, or you're not Antifa, you're just a normal person, and you hand someone a jump drive with, some plan on a list, your hunting list, and it's construed as a means to rally people together to overthrow the government. Let's just say that's pie in the sky, and people would say, no, that can't be there. Well, but it shows intent that you're willing to rally people to go on a hunt, and the hunt, they would say, would be for them. So they're changing your own words and changing your own definitions, or changing the definitions of the language itself. And that's how I see what they're doing here, is they're changing the definition of what a lightning link is. First off, an autokey card, this card itself, isn't a machine gun in any stretch of the way. We all know what a machine gun is. We've all seen them in movies. We've all seen them on the gun tuber spaces, like Mike from Mr. Guns and Gear, where he's actually showing you what a real machine gun is. And he's talking about what the differences are. We know what the hell a real machine gun is. So a blank piece of metal the size of a business card or a little bigger is not a machine gun. And we're letting the government get away with them saying that you can readily convert a known gun into a machine gun using this. Now, a lot can be said there because like an HK, any of the HK roller delayed designs have this little piece of metal that is the auto sear itself, and you can buy these. It's illegal because it shows constructive intent, I think is that what you would have to say there. Even if you're trying to get like the regular trigger pack, and I've done that, where I bought a trigger pack and I've actually milled it out because I wanted an HK parts correct gun. Now, had I not done that and still had that auto sear in my possession, I would have been a felon. But what I did is promptly cut it out of that trigger pack to make it to comply it, to pin it, what you're supposed to do with a HK roller delayed system, and got rid of those components so that I wouldn't be a felon. I don't want to be a felon. I want nothing to do with anything like that. And the reason why is because I believe the government needs to stay out of my life, and I'll do great steps to stay out of the limelight. But we're rapidly approaching that point where no matter what you do as a citizen, you're going to be conceived as the enemy because you like guns. And this highlights that. They've convicted a man for first asking an ATF field agency if something is legal, and the ATF field agency saying, sure, absolutely, go ahead. So he took this person on as a advertiser for his podcast or for his YouTube channel, and he advertised this product, and that's what got him in trouble with the federal law. Anybody who is approached by that's in this space or trying to make it in this space, who knows the struggle of trying to be able to pay your bills while you're trying to do this and start another business or anything else, knows that any welcome help from an advertiser would be awesome. So Matt did his due diligence. He went and asked straight up, is this legal? And when they said it was, he went ahead forward with advertising, because there's nothing wrong with advertising a product, especially one that's kind of innocuous like this. And I say innocuous because for all the left's banter and how evil this thing is, it took a field agent expert or an expert from the ATF 40 minutes to kind of get one to work. It would take an actual machinist or an actual gunsmith to make it work 100% of the time. That knowledge doesn't exist in open spaces. I mean, you have to seek it out. There's a difference between an armorer and a gunsmith. And if you're in the space that you've actually worked with guns, you know that there's a major difference. A gunsmith will actually get in and use a lathe and actually use harder, heavier tools than an armorer. An armorer can take an AR-15 down to its nuts and bolts, reassemble it, and put it back together. An armorer could probably even get a round out of the chamber when it's still live. Where a gunsmith would take a raw block of steel and mill it into a gun. Okay? This is where technology's democratization has taken us, is that the government no longer has a way to grab a hold of you because they know the genie's out of the bottle. I mean, you could print a lightning link, but you would have to then mill out the receiver to make it accept it. You would have to have another set of skills, is what I'm getting at. And if the government's now demonizing one of us for something like this, it's just a matter of time before they turn it on us. on the rest of us citizens. Now, Matt has a Give, Send, Go. Check out Mr. Guns and Gears video so you can help support his family and his fight in this right now. They are going to appeal this. But basically, as of Friday, Matt had to surrender and go to jail for simply following the law and advertising something that the government later determined was illegal. And I think that's where they're trying to push us with the pistol braces right now. Right now, pistol braces until May 31st, we have that left bit of amnesty if you want to keep them on your weapon, or convert it to an SBR and register it at the same time, whatever. You have to do this or the government's going to come after you, is what they're trying to say. Now, what I'm going to say is Freeman, don't ask permission, and that if you do you, basically. If you feel inclined to register something and enter the government into your life, do it. I personally don't own any of these devices anymore. Not because I was afraid of them. More so, I don't want to get entangled in this stuff. Like I said, I know the government is already looking at me because I'm talking about this stuff. You know, my business outside of this lends credence to that the government's probably watching me, and that I need to keep my P's and Q's, or cross my T's and dot my I's to make sure I'm not a turd. To that end, I've always been, I guess what they would call an upright citizen up until recently, where I started speaking out and saying that the government is a joke. And you can't look at today's government and see that they're looking for specific enemies that they see now that weren't their enemies just 2 years ago. But now you are. We're in a different space where the government now sees anyone who is not willing to walk in lockstep with them as the enemy. And to that end, anyone who's an advocate of freedom needs to rebel in whatever way they can. My rebellion is getting out and speaking to the masses, trying to tell them, hey, this is what's going on. It's also in how I conduct business and how I do things. I support people that support me, that don't hate me. It's time to step up and put our money and our funding where it belongs. If a corporation comes out and says, hey, they want to interject themselves into politics, and they want to go hard after something like the AR-15 because it is seen as the demon of the world right now, where we're not actually talking about the mental health problems we're having. I mentioned that multiple times, enough to where you're probably all tired of hearing it. But it's the fact. I mean, you cannot look at today's society, see people throwing themselves down in the street, or just acting abjectly off from where society was a year ago. That cliff that the left likes to talk about that doesn't exist, it's there. That slippery slope isn't a slope, it's an actual cliff. There wasn't a point in time that I thought we would ever see kids being dragged to shows that probably aren't appropriate for them, or, well, not probably, aren't appropriate for them. And that, there was a point in time that parents would get up and fight and say, no, this isn't going to happen. You're not going to do this to my kids. And today's society is a sick society where you see parents willingly taking them to places they probably shouldn't, because they're trying to be best friends with their kid and not being their parent. And that's where society's failed. I love my dad, and I think my dad and I became best friends later in life. But my dad was always stern enough to put his boot up my ass to keep me on the straight and narrow. And I wonder if that's what society's problem is that there's enough parents that have checked out that we're now dealing with those broken kids. OnlyFans, let's be honest, if you had a strong male role model in your life, I doubt those people, those ladies, would be on OnlyFans. They'd have a little more self-respect for themselves. I doubt that if there were more dads in the world that actually stood up and said no, there would be fewer of these little wussy, whiny boys out in the world that are trying to project that they're ultra mega Chad dudes by sleeping around, when in reality, it's the opposite. You should be the cornerstone of your family. You should be the bedrock that actually anchors your family. That's the job of the role of the man, is to be the breadwinner and the cornerstone of your family. You will go through suffering as a man. That's just part of life. Life sometimes sucks. Life sometimes is great. But part of being a man is knowing that you have to embrace the suck sometimes and you have to make it happen. And that's where society's failing. Society keeps looking at things like this and demonizing an object when we're not looking at the core problem. We have a cultural problem, a mental health problem, that in no way is being addressed by any of these culture war issues. In fact, it's making it worse. And why is that accepted in today's society? We have Washington State, another loss for the 2A. They signed a bill today that banned all modern sporting weapons in Washington State. How did that happen? Because there's not enough people willing to stand up and say enough's enough. We let the left into the circle, and when we did that, we ceded territory to them, and they took it over. A lot of people on the right just want to be left alone. They just want to live their lives. Well, damn it, that's not conducive to society anymore. What I mean by that is that you wanting to be left alone, you not willing to get into these spaces, you're going to have to accept these losses then and say that's acceptable. To me, it's not. To me, it's never been. Self-ownership is a thing. And that, I believe, is where we were meant to be going, is that you have to freely and willingly go towards the right side. It isn't all about yourself. It's about those around you. That isn't being altruistic. That is hard-coded into the human experience. If you want humanity to continue, something else you probably didn't see, and maybe you did if you watched something like Timcast. 40% of people on the left right now believe the world would be better without humans. 40%. Think about that. These are the same people that thinking murdering babies is a good plan. They think that getting that ultimate gratification of having, slept with 100 people is a great plan. Moral decay doesn't happen overnight, and it damn sure isn't stoppable overnight. But you can start putting those pieces in play to stop this crap from happening. And time again, we're seeing people who just were trying to conduct business, just try to do their thing, who tried to follow the law, and the law was changed on them. There's a saying in the communist Russia that says, "Show me the man and I'll show him the crime." I mentioned that before. We're there now. They're looking for a crime to try and arrest you. So some people will sit, tuck, and hide. I'm not one of them. I'm standing out here on the plateau trying to guide people and say, look, this is not correct. This is not right. Do something about it. I'm not trying to beat you over the head with a Bible, because I think if you're really that guy, you're going to follow it with regardless. But what I am going to say is there's parts of you being an American citizen that you're letting get eroded. And you're fine with that. I'm not. And there are thousands of me, people just like me, that aren't okay with that. So you've awoken a sleeping giant, and you've seen it in the Budweiser boycotts. They're down 17%, and they've lost actual market share. So if their stock is down 17% overall, finally conservatives have woken up. And I'm not a conservative anymore. I would consider myself a very libertarian or very much an anarchist. Because what I found is that the government seems to screw up everything they're given. For the longest time, I thought the government would never do the things that they're doing. I never thought I'd see a day where we would see political rivals in jail. And that seems to be the case now. And it seems to be the media is an organ of the state. Tucker Carlson got fired last night, or yesterday. So did Don Lemon. Don Lemon, I think, was fired because he was uncontrollable by his people. They tried to tell him to shut up multiple times on an interview with Vivek Ramaswamy. Tucker Carlson reported on the January 6th stuff and actually showed that all the lies that they had said, that it was more of a psyop than anything else. And that's why Rupert Murdoch, one of the biggest media moguls, came out and had him fired. I'm not a fan of Tucker. I've watched his stuff here and there, but who is? My son. I didn't even know that until last night. My son's been watching Tucker Carlson. That says something, that there's a younger generation there that is more plugged in to Tucker than I was. I think Tucker will be fine. He could go to the Blaze, The Wire, any of those, play Rumble, and he'll be able to do his same thing he was doing and probably get a bigger audience and make more money. But we're in interesting times now. And now's the time to kind of set your feet, grit your teeth, and say it's time to roll. Because I'll be damned if I'm ceding one more inch of ground to these assholes. Pardon my French. I'm done dealing with people that will change the law on you to get their way. Like, share, subscribe, be great.